Kwasi here, and in this video, I'm going to teach you how to control your mind and really how to propel yourself in a conscious manner rather than being unconsciously subject to all of these compulsions and everything that you've been experiencing in your day-to-day life that you don't enjoy. Make sure you stick around to the very end of this video, because if you understand just how to do this, if you understand how to control your mind and your entire thought process, you'll become unstoppable. Okay? You'll be able to consciously determine the very fate that unfolds before your eyes. Okay? So please stick around to the very end of this video, because this is going to be a complex topic that I'm going to attempt to break down and help you understand. And also by the end of this video, I'm going to be sharing with you the 2 keys to help you actually implement this in your life and begin to use this every single day to learn how to control yourself and become very, very conscious. Before I begin this video, I want to quickly announce that a couple of spots have opened up for the free one-to-one consult with me and my team for the Reality Mastery program. If you've been trying to sign up and you haven't found a spot, make sure you wait around till the end of the video for the announcement on how to enroll. And with that, let's get started. So in this video, I want to talk to you about controlling your mind and really like how to control your thought process and not be unconsciously subject to all of these things and everything around you that's just getting hammered into you. Okay? And really why I want to discuss this topic is because this is the biggest problem, right? Because you're unconsciously subject to everything around you, you have no conscious choice and say in how your life unfolds. All of those traumatic events, all of those things that have happened in the past, they start to arise up and they start to take a hold of you and they start to pull you like a puppet on a string, right? And it shouldn't be that way. You know, you should have a conscious choice and a say in the direction that your life takes and the trajectory that you follow. So really what happens is most people live in reactivity, okay? There is no proactivity happening because we don't understand this very thought process. And what I've recently been doing is just looking at myself and my own patterns of existence, right? A lot of people, they just go out there and look at books and everything. It's a distraction from looking at yourself. So if you start to notice your own patterns and how you react to certain thoughts, you know, certain thoughts, whether it be positive or negative, they'll start to have a certain pull and a tug on you, right? And how do you center yourself when that happens? Before we get to that, let's understand why we actually get so into our thoughts and why they start to control us. Okay, so to give you an example, let's say you get a horrible news, right? And you start to internalize that horrible news and the repercussions of it, and you put such a intensified negative meaning onto it that next time if a single hint of that horrible news comes, it starts to make you panic. You anticipate horrible news coming and the very thought of it starts to make your body panic, right? You just get into this fearful state, which then propels you into action, right? So to give you an example, in my business, when I would have certain things breaking down, like ad accounts getting shut down or customers wanting to refund, back in the day when I was like very, very attached to it, I'd be like, oh shit, you know, this is so bad, oh my God. When you get so close to it and you start to experience these things and you put such a bad meaning onto it, it starts to then pull you in that direction. So naturally what would happen is I would keep checking my ad accounts, I would keep checking my email, and then I'd be like, oh no, maybe my product is bad. Maybe this is bad. Maybe that is bad. Maybe this doesn't work. And then it starts to make you doubt yourself. And when you doubt yourself, you start to do some crazy shit, right? You start to start changing things up even though nothing was probably wrong. It was probably that individual client, you know, who was making an excuse. That was probably not the real reason that they made. And a whole plethora of things that you don't see because you just get so lost in that, right? So really, you'll see that when that horrible news happens, it propels you into doing things. When good things happen, it propels you into doing things as well. So our thoughts start to influence the very actions that we take, okay? Sometimes this can be good, but it's just unpredictable. You know, you didn't really choose it, so that's what the biggest problem is right now. So what I want to share with you is why this identification happens and how to overcome it and how to always remain grounded and consciously choose the thoughts you want. So please make sure you pay close attention to this. Now, what really happens is we have this mind and this body, okay? You have thoughts and you have the corresponding emotions that those thoughts bring. Or you have emotions and the corresponding thoughts the emotions bring, right? So we have our emotions and thoughts. Let's write thought first. This happens in the mind. and emotion, which happens predominantly in the body, right? An emotion is just a bodily reaction to some thought. Now, what gets identified to these thoughts that actually propel us into action? I want you to take a pause here and really think about this. The very reason you can observe that you have thoughts, aka you have mind, is because there is something that's beyond this mind. The very reason you can observe that there is emotion and the body is because there is something beyond the body. So, concluding that means there is something beyond the mind and the body, right? Something observes these things. Therefore, it can't be these things themselves, It just can't be the mind. The mind can't observe the mind. Something beyond the mind has to observe the mind. And that is closest to what we call awareness or consciousness. Okay? So what happens is when these thoughts arise, when these feelings arise, your awareness gets identified to them. And then every single part of and fiber of your being gets propelled in that direction. The real question becomes like, where do these thoughts even come from? Why am I thinking these? Right? When your awareness gets identified to it, you take ownership of these thoughts. You start to think that this thought and this emotion is you. When you get a refund request in your business and it makes you panic, you start to think that this is me. This horrible thought is my doing. And so I have to do something about it. So you just can't stay still through it. And that's why it immediately propels you into action. This horrible thought and this horrible feeling, they're all me. You don't see the distinction between the thought and the feeling and the awareness that gets attached to it. Does that make sense? So your awareness starts to encapsulate all of these things and eventually gets identified to them. So now let's understand the nature of the thoughts. Where do they come from? We don't really know, right? What we know is that these thoughts, because we can observe them and because we do not choose them, these thoughts, you didn't choose them. So therefore, they're not yours. If you chose them, then an argument could be made that, okay, maybe these thoughts are mine. But you didn't choose them, so they're not yours. So thoughts are predominantly incoming. They arise out of nothing, they go and dissolve into nothing. Right? It's just data. You just get a lot of data and impressions from your environment, wherever, things you've seen, things you've experienced. That's where the thoughts come from. So there's incoming thoughts, that we know. And they're not ours. They're just thoughts. But what happens is when awareness gets identified with these thoughts, they become outgoing thoughts. Okay? Now, we start to resonate at the frequency of these thoughts. What does that mean? When you start to resonate at the frequency of a certain thought, when your awareness gets identified with a thought, this thought now becomes a reality. Okay? This is like a quantum physics phenomenon. When you observe something, when the observer observes it, then it breaks down. The waveform collapses. Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Look that up. So when the observer observes a phenomenon, it no longer exists anymore. By the time the observer has observed it, it doesn't exist anymore in a wave. It becomes a particle. Right? So just like that, when your awareness gets identified to a thought, it now becomes a physical reality. It starts to become a reality for you. Within you, it's already become a reality. Your mind and your body make it a reality. When you think about a thought and you feel this thought, your nervous system can't distinguish between what's imagined and what's real. So for it, it becomes a reality. The whole goal of spirituality is to dissolve all of these illusions. Because you can create a beautiful illusion and reside in it, or your mind can just concoct this horrible illusion and suffer it. Or you can dissolve all of these illusions and just tend to the true nature of life, which is what the goal of most yogis and everything, enlightened beings, that's what they strive towards. right? So in purpose of manifestation and manifesting your goals, we want to consciously choose the positive part of it. So we create this positive illusion for us. So really what I want you to take away from this video is understanding that these thoughts and these emotions aren't even yours. You can choose which ones you engage with, but they're still not yours. When you choose to engage with it, then it becomes yours. But what's happening most of the time is you unconsciously choose to engage with it. So really think about it this way. Like anytime you have a thought arise, to give you an example, I'll think about like, oh, I need to order command strips on Amazon. And then I'll immediately go and do that. Because the mind is, the awareness is asleep, right? And it gets unconsciously identified with the mind. So what's the solution to this, right? How do you prevent all of these negative thoughts? How do you prevent all of this crap and all of this bullshit from crowding out your mind? And that's what we're going to get into right now. So key number one in dissolving these thoughts is understanding a method called self-inquiry. This is where you continually police your thoughts and you don't let them run amok. Okay? This is self-inquiry. There's a great book on this by Ramana Maharshi called Who Am I? It's a 15-page book. You can find it on Amazon. Go ahead and read that. It's very simple. The premise is to get to this awareness and rest as awareness. We don't rest as awareness. We rest as mind or body because the awareness gets identified to mind and body, right? So the question becomes, how do you rest as awareness? There are two simple questions you can ask. Think about any thought that you're having right now. Who thinks this thought? Who is the thinker of this thought? Ask that question. Who is the thinker of this thought? Who thinks? Who really thinks this thought? When you ask this question, it automatically destroys the identification of the thought and emotion, right? Like, who thinks this thought? You're automatically going beyond the thought. Who is it that thinks this thought? Next time you have a thought, just immediately catch it and ask yourself, who is it that thinks this thought? This destroys the identification. This is part one. The second part is resting as awareness itself, right? That's the goal. When you rest as awareness itself, you become very, very peaceful. Thoughts don't start to bother you anymore. And this is a journey. This is something you get used to over time. It doesn't happen overnight. I want you to know that. The second question that follows this naturally, because the answer to this is, oh, I think this thought. Who am I? Who am I? When you ask, who am I? What's the answer to that? There is no answer, just a realization. So the goal of this exercise is to get into the realization of this self. Do you understand? You don't try to answer these questions. They're aimed to help you get to the core of this, right? So think about it this way. You can inquire within the self and get to the true nature of the self. I can put my attention on my hand right now. Right? When I put my attention on my hand or on my breathing, I'm identified with the act of breathing. Okay? My attention is going to breathing. The awareness gets identified to breathing. But when I turn awareness in on itself, something interesting happens. All of these identifications start to get destroyed slowly. So instead of now awareness coming to mind, it gets rerouted back into itself. Who thinks this? You destroy this identification. Who am I? Awareness. Who am I? You don't try to answer the question because intellectually you can answer it, right? Oh, I'm something. I'm awareness and I'm God and I'm spirit, blah, blah, blah. But don't try to answer the question. Try to realize the question. Try to realize the answer. The question and the answer are the same. It's just two different sides of the coin. Who am I? Who is it that realizes this? When you get into the realization of this, your rest is awareness. Just see how peaceful this state feels. Key number 2, another big thing that comes within this is understanding, well, if I'm always resting as awareness, how can I, go about and achieve my goals? It's not about not thinking and forcing your thoughts and stopping your thoughts. It's just about drawing your energy away from the mind and the body and knowing when to consciously energize them. If you need to use them, you let your attention go there. But you can still rest as awareness. Right? This is something that's subtle, that happens over time. But now the difference is you consciously choose to do this. Now you can use your body and your mind, as opposed to getting used by them. You need your body and mind to function in this material world. If you don't want to function in this material world anymore, then you don't need them. Right? Then you just simply rest as awareness all the time. Simple. So, the second part is consciously using body and mind. How do you consciously use them? Well, when you like something and you want to do something, then you just go out there and do it. But you still remember this. You still remember to keep yourself grounded and centered. You're coming from a place of centeredness and awareness, as opposed to coming from a place of unconsciousness. Okay? So this doesn't mean you give up everything and go in a pursuit of spirituality. It's more so you learn how to be and you function in this world. But now this functioning comes from a much purer place. Okay, and with that, I conclude this video. Thank you so much for watching. I sincerely hope this was helpful. This was something that was a little bit complex, so I ask you to watch this video again and again and a couple of times to really realize the gist of this. But let's do a quick recap. We talked today about how most people live in reactivity and unconsciousness with all of their thoughts. And we don't even choose the thoughts that we have, but we think we do, and we take unconscious ownership of them. And they start to multiply and multiply and multiply until they've either encapsulated us and destroyed us, or they've, probably, luckily, taken us to some level of success. But when you become successful unconsciously, you always keep suffering your success until something goes wrong, and then it brings you back down from that pedestal that you were in. Okay? That's a story for another day. But what we talked about was how our thoughts and our emotions propel us into action. If you fear something and you think of it, it inevitably makes you go out there and do something. Like constantly checking your email and fearing it. That's no way to live. Right? And finally, we talked about how awareness gets identified to thought and emotion, which causes, this propelling into action. This whole being aligned to that. Because awareness is asleep. It's not really awareness anymore. It's just mind and body. It's identified to mind and body, so it becomes mind and body. And we understood how thoughts can be incoming, and all of them are. But when you identify with them, you start to make them outgoing. You start to project them out into the universe and radiate at that frequency. And the two keys to overcoming this, to really becoming awareness itself, is first of all, inquiring within the self. And this is a constant process that happens all the time until you grasp the realization of who you are. And then you just rest as awareness. You don't even have to ask these questions anymore. It just becomes a realization. This is the state of complete centeredness, equanimity, if you will. The two questions you've got to ask are, number one, whenever a thought pops up and you find yourself reacting to it, oh, I got to order this on Amazon. Oh, I got to do that. Oh, I got to make this for lunch. Who thinks this? To whom does this thought occur? We destroy the identification. Who am I? Rest as awareness. Who am I? Realize it. Don't try to answer the question. Realize who I am. Who am I? Who is it that thinks this? Who is the thinker behind this thought? To whom does this occur? Who am I? Rest is awareness. Number two, understand that this doesn't mean you've got to give up everything and just be like a monk. But you can consciously now function in this material world from that place of being, from that place of resting as awareness. If you start to do this, you're going to see how peaceful your life gets. But also, you'll start to see things just falling into place by themselves. You don't have to persist and insist anymore, but action just becomes natural. Right? When you remove all of the bullshit, all that remains is the essence. And with that, I conclude this video. Thank you so much for watching. I sincerely hope this was helpful. And if you're new to the channel, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, hit that little bell there so you're notified of any new video that I put out. And also, I'm super excited to announce that a couple of spots have opened up for the free one-to-one consult for the Reality Mastery Program. Make sure you click on the link in the description below to sign up for that, and let's see if we can help. Now, who this consult is for is basically entrepreneurs who find that they're stuck at a certain revenue level in their businesses, or they can't quite transition out from what they're doing, and they have all of the tactics and strategies, and they know what to do, but for some reason they either can't do it, or with everything that they do, they kind of hit a barrier. And they're starting to see slowly that this barrier is no longer an external one. This is not a business problem anymore. What appears to be a business problem is just an internal one that's getting reflected out into the business. You're not really clear on what you want, or you fight against yourself every single day. That's why you see an inconsistent revenue, or you're stuck at the 5 to 10K a month and you just can't scale up. If that sounds like you, click on the link in the description below to sign up. This consult is for you. And the free Facebook group is also open for you to take advantage of. The link for that is also in the description. Make sure you fill up the 3 questions because we want to keep this group very, very high quality and with the right individuals. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this was helpful. Till next time. Peace.